In 1972, Don McLean wrote a song called American Pie. In the song, he makes a reference to the date February 3rd, 1959. On that day, three of the rising stars were killed in a plane crash. Those stars were named Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and JP the Big Bopper Richardson. In the song, McLean declared February 3rd as the day the music died. Today I want to talk about that day and the circumstances around it. So without further ado, this is the day the music died. Before we begin, if you want to see music bios or more good videos like this, hit the subscribe button. And without further ado, on to our feature presentation. Before we begin, I want to give a brief background on all the artists, starting off with Ritchie Valens. Ritchie Valens was born Richard Valenzuela on May 13, 1941 in Pacoima, California. At an early age, he became eager to play the guitar and eventually self-taught him the instrument despite being left-handed. Years later, a man in Seattle will perfect the instrument for left-handed people. Through his junior high and high school years, he became infatuated with the rock and roll craze swept by Elvis, Little Richard, and Chuck Berry. He joined a local band called the Silhouettes. He got noticed by Bob Keane and he offered Richard a recording contract. He would give him the stage name Ritchie Valens. In 1958, he signed with Delphi Records and recorded two hits, Come On Let's Go and Donna, which was dedicated to his girlfriend. But Donna's B-side, La Bamba, would give him mainstream success. With easy momentum, he was booked to participate in the Winter Party Dance Tour in 1959. Buddy Holly was born Charles Hardin Holly on September 7, 1936 in Lubbock, Texas. After graduating high school, he pursued music full-time, but instead of doing country music that has taken over Texas, he listened to rock and roll. In 1956, he formed the Crickets and became the band's frontman. They recorded hits like That'll Be the Day, Peggy Sue, and Maybe Baby, among many others. In 1958, Holly went solo as the Crickets dissolved due to financial and managerial dispute. While his cricket life ended, his personal life flourished. He married Marie Santiago, and she became pregnant shortly after. Needing financial support, he decided to join the Winter Party Dance Tour in 1959. The Big Bopper was born Giles Perry Richardson on October 24, 1930 in Sabine Pass, Texas. He started working for radio part-time in 1948, and when he was hired full-time, he departed college. And it was said that he made the first ever music video. While having songwriting experience, he didn't start recording until 1958. That recording made was Chantilly Lace. Chantilly Lace became a big hit in America, and feeding off of the momentum of Chantilly Lace and having a baby on the way, he took time off the radio station and booked himself in the Winter Party Dance Tour. The planning for this tour was atrocious. The first day was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and instead of doing this, they did this. The promoters basically threw darts on locations, which made traveling difficult. The temperatures of the Midwest fell below freezing, and the tour bus, or buses, they drove had faulty heating systems. Valens and Richardson began to experience flu-like symptoms, and one of Holly's drummers was hospitalized for frostbite. It was said that Valens filled in as a drummer for Holly during that period. The tour will later be known as the Tour from Hell. On February 2nd, the bus made a pit stop in Clear Lake, Iowa, which is outside of Mason City. The date was originally an open day to give time for acts to wash clothes, rest, and take care of personal issues. The promoters wanted them to perform at the Surf Ballroom to fill the open date. The owners gave them a last-minute thumbs up to perform, and by this time, Buddy Holly was over the tour and was growing tired of the bus issues. He decided that after the show at the Surf, he was going to fly him and his band to Fargo, North Dakota, which is adjacent to their next destination in Moorhead, Minnesota. His main motivation for the flight was that he just wanted to wash his clothes. Earlier that day, he couldn't get his clothes washed because Clear Lake laundromats were closed for unknown reasons. Each passenger, by the way, will pay $36, which it will cost them about $330 in 2021 terms. Flight plans end up hitting some minor speed bumps. The Big Bopper spotted Holly's bassist, Waylon Jennings, who would end up having a respectable career in country, asked him for a seat on the plane. Seeing that the Big Bopper was super sick, Jennings gave up his seat for the Big Bopper. Holly found out that Jennings wasn't going to fly, and Holly joked and said, "I hope your old buses freeze up." And Jennings clapped back and said, "Well, I hope your plane crashes." And this comment lived with Jennings for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, Ritchie Valens, formerly of Areophobia, heard about the flight and asked guitarist Tommy Alsop about his flight and settled with a coin flip. Valens won the toss and was given the final seat on the plane. And according to a recent interview, Dion of the Belmonts, who was also on that tour, was offered a spot on the plane, not Jennings nor Alsop, but he declined because he didn't want to pay the $36 fare, which was the same amount his parents paid for his childhood apartment. Whatever the case was, Holly, instead of flying his band to Fargo, he is on a plane with Ritchie Valens and the Big Bopper. At 12:50 a.m., Valens, Holly, and Richardson arrived at Mesa City Airport to light snowfall. Despite this, pilot 21-year-old Roger Peterson took off in a small Beechcraft Bonanza around 12:55 a.m. At 1 a.m., Peterson was supposed to make a radio call contact but failed to do so. Repeated attempts to contact the plane ensued, but all unsuccessful. The airport assumed that they had radio issues. That morning, Mesa City Airport contacted Fargo's airport to see if they made it to the airport. Fargo responded and they said they have not heard from Peterson nor the plane. At around 9:30 a.m., Mason's airplane decided to retrace Peterson's route, and not long after, they found a wreckage. Mesa City Airport contacted police and they drove to the crash site at a cornfield. Police found the bodies of Ritchie Valens and Buddy Holly near the wreckage. The Big Bopper's body was flown over a fence, and Roger Peterson's body was still trapped inside. All four died of burns and blunt force trauma. Buddy Holly was 22, JP Richardson was 28, and Ritchie Valens was only 17. Now let's answer this question. What caused the plane to crash? And I could answer this question by saying, I'm not sure. To this day, 60 years later, we have not got a clear answer. Instead, we got speculation. Many blamed the crash on bad weather, which is true and false. Remember when I said that Clear Lake only received light snowfall? That wouldn't impact the flight that often. But instead, it should be noted that Peterson, the pilot, was too inexperienced to fly in questionable weather anyway. Thus, they ruled that the plane crash was caused by pilot error. When the news broke, the rock and roll world went into shock. Marie Santiago was said not to take the news well and would eventually suffer a miscarriage due to the stress and grief. She did not travel to Lubbock to attend his funeral either. Another rock and roll singer named Eddie Cochran recorded a song called 3 Stars, and in each verse he speaks to the spirits of the fallen. Sadly, 1 year later, he himself would die in a vehicular accident. After the deaths of Holly Valens and the Big Bopper, the tour continued, a move that I disagreed with. Dion and the Belmonts went from side act to main attraction, and Waylon Jennings and Tommy Alsop took turns singing Holly's lead. Rock and roll was left in a pretty bad shape after this incident because no one could fill in the void. Elvis was in the military, Little Richard found God, Chuck Berry had that incident with an underage girl, and I already mentioned Eddie Cochran's fate. It wasn't until the mid-60s when Beatlemania took over the world and would change the face of music. By the time 1973 came along, the memories of the fallen were fading. That was until some of Buddy Holly's songs and the Big Bopper song Chantilly Lace appeared on the movie American Graffiti. The movie introduced rock and roll to a new audience. 1 year earlier, Don McLean recorded the folk classic American Pie. In the song, he makes a reference to the crash, calling it the day the music died. Prior to this, the 1959 crash didn't have a name. American Pie charted at number 1 for 4 weeks and became the longest number 1 song in terms of time, clocking in at 8 minutes 42 seconds. And this record will be broken by Taylor Swift when All Too Well's Taylor's version eclipsed that, clocking in at 10 minutes 13 seconds. In 2017, the song was inducted in the Library of Congress. In 1978, the Buddy Holly story hit theaters. Portraying Holly was Gary Busey in a breakout role. The film was critically and commercially praised and gave Busey an Academy nomination. The film itself won an Academy Award for Best Adaptation Score. Yes, the movie had some inaccuracies, but overall, this was a good film. But the film saw unhealed grief for Marie Santiago. During the premiere, the scene where Buddy is singing True Love Ways to pay homage to his wife, she allegedly wept and left the premiere before the movie ended. In 1987, Ritchie Valens had his story told in La Bamba. Portraying Ritchie was Lou Diamond Phillips in a breakout role. Los Lobos handled most of the music and recorded their own version of La Bamba, and that version went number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. During the filming of La Bamba, things became problematic where they shot the scene where the plane takes off. The family, who was present throughout filming, were there for that scene, which they probably shouldn't have been there. Ritchie's actual sister broke down, grabbing Lou Diamond Phillips, saying, "Ritchie, why did you go?"
She starts trembling and she says to me, "Why did you go? Why did you have to go? Ritchie, why did you have to go?" And she throws herself onto me, and she's crying, and I'm holding her, and she's just sobbing over and over. "Why did you have to go? Why did you have to go?" And it was, I was lost at that time. I had no idea what to do.
But it was said after the incident, the family accepted Ritchie's death. But 3 months after the film was released, Ritchie's mother, Connie Valenzuela, died, and she does appear in the film as a partygoer. The film La Bamba was critically and commercially praised, as it saw Phillips nominated for a Golden Globe, and in 2017, 30 years after the film was released, La Bamba was inducted in the Library of Congress. In 2007, in response of internet rumors that the Big Bopper was shot before the plane went down by Holly, Jay, the Big Bopper's son, ordered his body to get re-examined. Another autopsy was performed and they found no gunshot wounds, but instead a ton of fractures from the head to the toe, after which his body was moved to a proper grave site. Jay Richardson lived up to his father's legacy, performing under the name The Big Bopper Jr. He became a regular at the Surf Ballroom, performing tribute concerts there until his unexpected death in 2012. Speaking of the Surf Ballroom, it became a rock and roll museum, and every year on February 3rd, they hold tribute concerts. And in 2021, the Surf Ballroom became a National Historic Landmark. And that concludes The Day the Music Died. Tell me what y'all think in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.